Chapter 10. They walked all day. Ben and his sisters must have looked funny, stumbling along with their mouths open. Ben saw the comical look on Issachar and Ibba's faces, and he felt the same expression lighting up his own. But he couldn't help himself. The jungle was amazing. Ben had never seen such a beautiful place. Ibba's feet hardly touched the ground as she danced and skipped along the path. They walked along a road little more than a path, with red, packed dirt beneath their feet. Trees leaned over them on each side, nearly touching, so that sometimes Jabari had to wait and hold back branches to let the others pass. The 3 birds flew overhead, stopping to wait in trees, singing as they swooped from branch to branch. Ben's heart rang in response to their singing. There were so many trees. Some of them were tall, with white trunks and dark green leaves as big as people. Some trees had dark blue leaves, small and round, the trunks a deep red. There were trees with brilliant purple flowers and trees with white blossoms that gave off a fragrance that trailed after the travelers or beckoned to them around corners. There were fruit trees, and at one point Gavi stopped under a tree and picked 5 small red fruits. He handed one to each of them. The fruit was round, with tight skin and a pit in the center, tart and sweet on the tongue. It felt like drinking a long drink of water, or like swimming. Ben stood a little straighter. They all did. Ben walked with Issachar while Ibba ran ahead, pointing at things and running back to them. She was like a young goat. Ben felt the same way inside. He envied her freedom. Benim was nearly a man at 13 years, and he was too old to run and jump and skip. But he walked with long, swinging strides. He felt different, not slipping from shadow to shadow, trying to hide. His bow swung on his back. The satchel Jabari had given him to carry hung at his side. And he looked up, instead of at the ground. The sky overhead was a deep, brilliant blue, with flocks of green, chattering birds streaming through the jungle from time to time. "It's beautiful," Issachar said, and sighed. "I wish there were better words to describe what it is. It's so much more than beautiful." Ben knew what she meant. The surroundings reached deep inside somehow, like the bird's speech. "How are you?" she asked. He looked at her then, walking beside him, and he saw that she carried herself differently. Her strength seemed less like anger and more like grace. She held her head up. "I feel more awake than I have in a long time," he answered her, "as though I've been half asleep and I'm only now waking up." Ben frowned. There was so much more than that, but he had never told her about the torment of oppressive dread he'd endured in the village. So he didn't know if he could tell her about the way he was sensing things now. It felt like a jungle of music inside him, the world in duplicate, as though he could close his eyes and still see the heart of everything. "I know what you mean," Issachar said. She sounded surprised. She looked at him. "You don't normally answer when I ask questions like that," she said. It was true. For a long time, speaking had seemed as though it was too dangerous, and Ben often chose not to talk through the voices in his head. No wonder she was surprised. She went on. "I feel stronger, taller, happier, younger, and older at once," she said. "You look different," he said. Issachar's eyes were clear and dark, more alive. Her whole face was more relaxed and less pinched. The fierce look she always wore had receded, smoothing her forehead. She looked like someone you could approach easily. "So do you," she said. They smiled at each other. Ben's smile was so unfamiliar that Issachar realized that her brother almost never smiled. She felt a sudden flash of grief that made her gasp, sorrow for the small children they had been. They would never get a second chance at being little. and they had lost their sister. "Ben," Issika whispered, "do you think they have Arya?" He frowned and looked at the dirt. "It seems like too much to hope. I can't quite believe that they found everyone." Issika agreed. She had thought of her little sister as dead for so long it seemed unbearable to hope that she was alive. They would have to wait and see. Because she was thinking of Arya, the familiar grief washed over her. Sadness felt more real in this land, the same way pleasure and joy seemed to be stronger. Issika thought she would crumple under the sadness of loss, but the bird Jabari had called Ifir passed overhead, coming so close that her wing brushed Issika's shoulder. Peace wrapped around Issika, entwined with the bird's song. Even after the bird flew away, Issika heard the intriguing song in her head. She decided to ask about the giant birds that Jabari called the Othra. She would find out who and what they were. Around the time the sun was getting ready to set, Jabari held a hand up and stopped walking. Issika and Ben stuttered to a stop behind him, and Issika stared at Jabari's shoulders, square and tense. Her clothes were sticking to her. The day was still hot, and she was ready for a little evening coolness. She looked back at the path, at Gavi standing next to Ibba. He was tense as well, and he seemed to be listening to something. Jabari started forward again, and the others followed, whispering along the path until a house became visible in a little clearing on the right side. There was a short wall around it, half the size of a wall in Issika's village. The house could easily be seen behind it. To Issika's eyes, the half-wall made the house look unprotected, almost naked. "Wait here," Jabari said. "Gavi and I have work to do." "Can we help?" Issika asked. "You won't be able to help with this," he said. The two boys walked ahead until they were beside the house, then put their hands on the wall. Issika took a breath. Touching another person's wall was forbidden. But then she felt a shock that vibrated from her eyes to her toes as the two older boys began to pull at the wall. They grasped big chunks of stone, gripping it in their hands. It came away as though it was made of garden dirt. Issika was frozen, horrified. Both Gavi and Jabari broke huge sections of it away until it was open to the ground. She screamed. Beside her, Ibba was crying. Jabari looked back at them, a puzzled frown on his face. Issika ran to him. "You cannot!" she cried, breathless. "It's sacred!" His face moved into the same angry, hard look he had worn when they spoke of the sending. "It is not sacred here," he said. He and Gavi continued breaking large pieces of the wall, walking around the house, tearing every part away. The others watched in silence. All at once, Issika felt stunned and chilled. Too many things had happened in a short time, and she sank to the ground, where she sat exhausted. All around the house there was a great cloud of dust from the broken pieces of wall. The birds had flown off somewhere, so Issika couldn't even ask them to explain what was happening. Ben stood beside her, watching, his face set and quiet. Ibba still cried, though now she sounded like she was crying because she was too tired to stop. Issika reached out to squeeze her hand, and Ibba collapsed onto her. Issika adjusted so that Ibba's head was on her lap. She stroked her sister's hair absently, waiting for the wrath of the goddesses to fall on them, looking toward the sky to see if it would come from the open blue. Maybe it would erupt from the ground beneath them. She was momentarily distracted by the color of the sky. She had never seen such a deep blue before. It was so blue it seemed there must be another name for it. "Issika," Ben said suddenly. She looked. The dust around the house was clearing. She could see that instead of rubble there was nothing. The wall had completely disappeared. "Where did it go?" Ibba asked, awe in her voice. "I don't know," Issika said, shaking her head. Honestly, there were far too many things in the world that she hadn't known about, and it made her angry, but she didn't know who to be angry with. Jabari dusted his hands off near the front entrance of the house, and Gavi paused at the doorway to touch the upper mantel with his thumb before entering. "He's intruding on their ground," Issika said dully. She stood and walked to where the wall had been, looking at its absence with a sick feeling in her stomach. She had been taught that the walls were sacred since before she could remember differently. Ever since they had come out of the desert to stay with the workers, they had honored and said the sacred words over the walls every single day. The whole world felt like it had turned on its side, as though soon they would fall straight out into the brilliant blue nothingness of the sky. Jabari approached, and as he did, Ben and Ibba moved closer to Issika, Ibba slipping her hand into Issika's and leaning on her leg, so that the three of them were a unit, facing the strangeness of what the boys had done. Gavi came out a few moments later, ahead of a black-skinned woman with a baby on her hip. The woman was crying. Gavi laid his hands gently on either side of her head, and after a few breaths, the woman grew calm. She looked at them, standing where the wall had once been. She still had tears on her face. "Please come in," she said. "I'll prepare dinner for you." Beside Issika, Jabari nodded. "We will come," he said. He turned to Issika and the others. "This part is important," he said, "so don't try to refuse. Gavi has healed her, but for her healing to be complete, she needs to offer hospitality. Because the wall hadn't been here long, the poison wasn't too strong, and we didn't need a more experienced healer. If the poison had been stronger, she could have gone crazy because we don't have a healer strong enough to heal the deepest wounds." He paused. "We have to leave many walls and come back when a strong healer is available." He spoke kindly, as though he was happy to offer some knowledge like the new fruit Gavi had offered to them only a few hours before, as though there was any way under the four goddesses' realms that Issika could understand the words coming out of his mouth. Almost none of what he had said made sense, but Issika still had a question. "Why don't you just travel with an experienced healer, then?" His face changed, and his eyes were sad. "We don't have enough healers for that anymore. The gift is given less now that we don't have our queen. Gavi is an excellent healer, but he's still just a baby bird right out of his nest." Gavi was with them again, and he punched Jabari's shoulder lightly. Jabari's words had only brought Issika more questions, but there wasn't time for them, because they were walking to the woman's front door. "We'll sleep here tonight," Jabari said, turning as they walked up the steps, "and continue in the morning. You three look exhausted." Issika was surprised again. She didn't feel tired, but when she looked at Ibba, she saw her little sister yawning. Jabari and Gavi, meanwhile, after walking half the day and breaking a sacred wall to the ground, looked the same as they had when they had woken that morning. "But how do you know? How did you know that the wall was small enough for you to break?" It was the only thing she could think to ask, though there were about 76 more things she needed to know desperately. "I just know. This is my kind of magic. I am a protector. It's my gift. Gavi has a bit of protection in him as well, though he is mainly gifted with healing." Issika stopped and looked at Gavi, who smiled at her and nodded his head. He crinkled his eyes and gestured that she should enter the house. They entered the house together to find a clean, well-swept space, which, though small, had a kitchen with bright windows. They sat on mats on the floor and accepted bowls of spicy stew. Issika ate hers so quickly she hardly tasted it, then helped with washing up the dishes. Her last feeling before she fell asleep on her sleeping mat was irritation that Jabari knew so much more than she did. She would force him to explain in the morning.